This is Sue Petrisin from the Michigan District of Kiwanis, and I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight on Kiwanis Let's Talk. Let me give you a brief overview of where we're heading the next couple of weeks. If you haven't seen, I did send the link to the dues discussion that we had with immediate past President Burt out earlier this week. It is also on the Michigan District of Kiwanis YouTube page, and I did post it, as did a few other people, posted on Facebook, so that is available and out there. We will continue to develop that program and develop some other, short videos that will go with that over time. And then we are looking at this week and next week with Tom on AI. And then I've been talking with Bryce Kinder to come in and talk about the Kiwanis website, cybersecurity. And then we have set up 4 weeks to talk, 2 weeks to talk to the trustee candidates and 2 weeks to talk to the vice president candidates. And then we will welcome Paul Palazzolo, who will be our executive director beginning February 1. And then Katrina Barenko is our president. Amy Zimmerman is the Kiwanis Children's Fund president. So we've got pretty well booked in through January already, through the end of January. So we'll keep those going. We are skipping Thanksgiving Day here in the United States, which is Thursday let's see here. I just had it. Thursday the 23rd, only because I have to work. Yes, I have to work. There's a game that day. So we will skip Thursday, and then we'll skip a couple days in December, typically for the same thing, as I'll be working those days. So, but let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is Sue Petrisin with the Michigan District of Kiwanis, and I'm pleased to have with us tonight and next week the Director of IT for Kiwanis International, Tom Castonzo. And Tom's going to talk to us tonight about the introduction to AI. I know that many of you heard about ChatGPT, BingChat, and everything else that's going on out there. But Tom's going to give us a presentation this week. Next week, it'll probably continue on from this week to next week. But as I was mentioning earlier before we got started, we had scheduled this program at our Kiwanis Great Lakes Conference in August. 40 people were set. Seating-wise, we had 70 people in the room. So there's very much a big interest in this program. We will continue to take questions through chat, and if we'll have time at the end of the program, Tom will answer questions again this week and next week. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Sue. Thanks everyone for being here. So this is a very hot topic right now, as Sue mentioned, and I'm really excited about all the opportunities we have with AI for our organization. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about it today and next week as well. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to go over what the definition of AI is, and we're going to talk about the history of AI. I'm going to go over ChatGPT. We're going to talk about BingChat, what the differences are between those two platforms, and then we're going to talk about practical applications for AI that you can use right now. And then there's, of course, ethical considerations with using AI that we'll talk about as well. So basically, AI has been around for a long, long time, which I'll show in a few slides. But basically, it's trying to simulate the way humans think and problem solve. So think of what you do on a daily basis, anything that's very repetitive, that it has a series of steps. All of those things are very easy for AI to do. And that's basically, task-driven types of scenarios I'm talking about here. But basically, artificial intelligence as a paradigm is basically trying to mimic human intelligence and thinking to solve problems. So, artificial intelligence has been around for a very long time. It's been around way before ChatGPT and all of the stuff we're seeing now with BingChat and et cetera. It started back in the 50s, and there was a need back then for researchers to just make their lives a little bit easier instead of doing a lot of manual tasks. They decided, can we have a computer figure out how to do this stuff for us? So, for example, if anyone's a mathematician on this call, you'll know that you might like doing mathematical proofs. Maybe you remember that from college. it's very time intensive, especially if you have a theorem that's very complex to prove. So they were looking at ways of having computers helping them with that. So back in 1955, AI was really starting to be leveraged in research institutions, in universities, specifically in 1955, with Logic Theorist, which was the first AI program written to help mathematicians do proofs. And then shortly after that, there was an actual programming language that was actually created to help with these types of AI problems that were being that needed to be solved back then, mathematical proofs, some more in science and research, which we'll get into on a few more slides. But John McCarthy in 1958 created Lisp, which is still a programming language used today, still used in artificial intelligence. It became the first programming language that could be used specifically to develop artificial intelligence systems or software. And then we get into 1964, 1966, where we had our first AI psychotherapist. Okay. So even back then, there was someone you could talk, a computer you can tell your problems to, and they would try to diagnose you and try to help you out there back in the mid 60s. So Eliza was its name, her name, I guess. I'll show you a screenshot of what Eliza looked like in a few slides. And then there's Shurdlu in 1968 through 1970, which was another natural language understanding system. So natural language is basically what ChatGPT is really good at. That's what BingChat's really good at, is understanding human language and being able to understand context and put context around human language and understanding what you're trying to say, even if it's not very clear. So Shurdlu came out, and I'll show you a screenshot of that. That was a program that actually try to put context behind a question that it was asked. So now we're getting into AI, even back in the late 60s, early 70s, that was contextual. So it was trying to discern between a few different answers it could give you based on what you were asking. So you see these types of things in the AI that we're using now, but way more refined and way more polished. But this was going on a long time ago, is the point I'm trying to make here. So here's Eliza. Here's a screenshot of Eliza, just a program running on a computer. And Eliza, it's basically like a chatbot. This is our first, you consider this our first chatbot, where she's asking, what's wrong with you? And the person is saying, men are all alike. How true is that, right? And what is the connection, do you suppose? And it's just basically going on and on and on. And Eliza's trying to help out this person, and trying to just further understand what's going on, trying to give some sort of benefit or relief to this person. Obviously, this is, at the time, Eliza was not thinking, and being able to come up with novel responses. These responses were all programmed into the AI, unlike now, where when you get a response from ChatGPT or BingChat, you're getting a novel response. You're getting a unique response, something that is truly unique to your particular question. So this was interesting. Here's Shurdlu. This is a screenshot of the graphical interface for Shurdlu, where the user said, "Okay, pick up a big red block." Okay, so Shurdlu understood that because there's two red blocks, but one is bigger than the other. So Shurdlu knew which block the person was talking about. But then if you asked it to grasp a pyramid, since there's several pyramid shapes here, it didn't know which one you were talking about. So it's asking, someone's saying to tilt my screen. I'm not sure what someone just put it in chat. Anyway, to tilt my screen. So anyway, I'm not sure. I'll see what I can do about that. Anyway, that's going on with someone else. Never mind. Sorry. So grasp a pyramid doesn't know what pyramid you're talking about. It's asking, okay, what pyramid do you really want me to talk about? There's several on the screen. So starting to see some intelligence there. And we keep going, 65 through 80. This is I'd like to talk about periods of AI where basic things were happening or concepts were being defined. If you had to distill it down, mid 60s through 1980, we're talking about expert systems that were developed using artificial intelligence. An expert system is just a system that can do one thing really well. It knows, it's a domain expert in something, like, for example, mass spectra of unknown organic compounds is an example. What Dendril did was designed to do. And again, this before humans would have to do this, go through reams and reams of data to try to figure this out and look for unknown organic compounds. So they figured out they could do this with a computer, because computers are really good at recognizing patterns. AI in particular, really good at recognizing patterns even back then. And so you could train a system and become an expert in an area by training it, by telling it what to look for, giving it all of the parameters, giving it all the data it needs, so it could make these comparisons and look for things that are unknown, right? By giving it the compounds that are known, then it could find things that are unknown, right? When it's doing its interpretation. So those are called expert systems. They're used they're used even today. They're a lot more advanced. Mycin was another one in 72 that was used to look for, to diagnose bacterial infections and offer treatments. So again, there was humans behind this that programmed this expert system in both cases with very specific domain related data. So then you can interact with that particular, either with Dendril or Mycin, and with very specific parameters, get what you need. So they're very limited in what they could do, but they were good at those specific tasks. And so the 80s were basically this expert systems boom, and where all of these systems started to pop up. XCON was one. Digital Equipment Corporation. Some of you might remember Digital Equipment Corporation. You might even had some of that hardware in your jobs back in the day. This was one of the first. Digital Equipment Corporation, interestingly, very interesting to me, was the first example of job displacements due to advancement in AI. So you hear now, there's, with all of this AI, there's going to be jobs that workers are going to get displaced, they're going to have to be retrained. And that certainly is true, and it is happening, but it's been happening for years, right? It's been happening for over 40 years already. So XCON was designed to basically go in and configure computer systems. So normally you have, before that, and even now, if you don't have a configuration manager system, you have to manually configure computers. So imagine that's very time consuming, it's very tedious work. And if you're doing it for a corporation that makes hardware that needs a lot of computers to be configured, that's what you're selling, that's a lot of work, and a lot of people have to do that. So they created an expert system to do that. And as a result of that, all of those configuration experts I don't know what happened, if they were laid off or if they put them in another role in that particular job, in that company. But that was the first example of being displaced by an AI back in the 80s. So it's been going on for a while. It's nothing new. But now we're at an double exponential curve with AI. And I'll explain a little bit about that and what I mean by that in terms of its speed and its rate of change, and the way that it's growing is it's double exponential, because one, with AI now, it's learning at such a high rate of speed because it's being able to ingest information from the internet. Not only that, now AI is able to understand videos and be able to understand context and pull text out of videos, make sense out of images. Other kinds of media that normally would not be ingested into an AI are now being able to be ingested. That includes audio, video. Basically, the audio gets converted into text, is what I'm trying to say there. So because of all of that, because the AI is learning at being able to take all of that data that it's getting and learn so fast from it, that it has a compounding, double exponential growth rate, to the point now where we don't even understand how it's able to do some of the things it's doing, which is a little scary. A good example of that is there was a language model that was trained to do translations in one language, then all of a sudden it was able to do them in another. Even without being trained in those other languages, it's just started to learn on its own based on the data that it was trained with and what it had access to. It was able to extrapolate and be able to translate from one language to different languages that were not even part of what it was being trained to do. So there's some we're concerned there that because these models learn so quickly, and it's really hard to kind of reverse engineer that process of what they learned and how they learned what they've learned. So that causes a little bit of concern. So I have to be careful with it. That's what I mean by double exponential growth in terms of its learning capabilities. The reason I bring that up here now is because these systems we're looking at now on the screen from the 90s and past, I would say, even from 2019 and in the past, we're not able to grow at that clip. So that's really I'm saying, oh, well, yeah, well, there's been all of this, there's been some job displacement back, in the 70s and the 80s, and that's true, but not at the rate that we're going to see and have been seeing going forward. So all of this is just accelerated very quickly, is the point I'm trying to make. So in 1997, to keep going with going through our history here, is where Deep Blue was created by IBM, which was a chess playing AI bot that beat Garry Kasparov. Maybe some of you have seen some of those matches or heard about them. But Garry Kasparov is a Russian, was considered the best chess player in the world, and was beat by Deep Blue. And then Alice came out in '95, which is another chatbot, better than Eliza, that was able to do a little bit more engaging types of conversation with people, and we'll see a little bit about that. But here's Deep Blue. So what that looks like is a huge, like industrial refrigerator back there. That's actually a computer that Deep Blue is plugged into, and also next to it, all that along the wall behind Deep Blue are all the computers that are running that program and be able to do the processing and thinking for this chess playing program. So it's quite a lot of compute power back there. And that doesn't change today, by the way. There's still a huge amount of compute power that's needed to power AI. And we'll talk about BingChat and what's going on there related to that. So here is Alice. So a little bit more graphical interface. She has a face. Other than what we were seeing before was purely text in Eliza. So Alice, you would basically install her from a drive, a disk, and put a disk in your computer, install it like the old days when you would install software. Anyway, so basically it's the same kind of Q&A thing, where there's some interaction going on. Again, all programmed, looking for certain types of sentences, and all of this was pre-programmed. So the responses were looking for certain questions, is what I'm trying to say there. So everything was very programmed. Alice or Eliza, they're not thinking for themselves. They're repeating what they were given in their program to say. And so that brings us into the 2000s. We start getting into autonomous vehicles. Stanford had the first one in 2005. They won the DARPA Grand Challenge with their first self-driving car. And then Watson came out in 2011, which was IBM's Jeopardy bot that actually went on Jeopardy and actually wiped the floor with two other contestants that were actually really good Jeopardy players. And then it brings us into the GPT models, generative preform transformers, which includes ChatGPT, BingChat are the two big ones that we're going to talk about that use that GPT model. Generative pre-trained transformers. So that started back in 2018. So here's what Stanley looked like. Look at all those cameras all over the place. That was the first self-driving car in 2005. And there's Watson wiping the floor with a couple really good players. I think the guy on the left actually turned out to be the host of Jeopardy, right? For several years. He looks very familiar to me. I'm not a huge Jeopardy fan, but the guy on the left looks like the latest Jeopardy host or the second to last Jeopardy host. I don't know. But anyway, Watson, again, was able to think in a very high level and just be able to regurgitate answers to questions in the form of Jeopardy. So none of that we've seen so far is truly impactful and game changing in and of themselves. It's an evolution. So all of these things have shown the technology evolving since the 50s. And that brings us to the topic of the types of artificial intelligence. The first slide was, okay, what is artificial intelligence? Yeah, it's simulating a human, the way humans think and how they problem solve. But there's two types of artificial intelligence. If we put them into buckets, there's narrow AI and there's general AI. Narrow AI is what we have now, including ChatGPT and BingChat. So everything from Eliza that we saw in the 50s up until ChatGPT, up until right now, is all considered narrow AI. That seems, well, how can that be? How can you have something that's pre-programmed and can only give you answers that it has programmed into its system versus ChatGPT that can actually create stuff, right? It could create images, it can create stories, it could create poems, it could do all this stuff. How is that all considered the same? And there are three characteristics or attributes that define narrow AI, and this is why ChatGPT falls into that bucket with those others from the 50s up until now. And ChatGPT and BingChat, they're still very specialized in what they can do. They are specialized. They're going to take some text, you're going to ask it a question, it's going to try its best to answer it, but it's very specialized. And that's what it's been designed to do. It's been designed to talk, not just to interact with humans via text as the medium. And it's, it really can't perform tasks outside of what it's been programmed to do. So it's limited, and that's not a bad thing, to put some guardrails on this technology. But it can only do what its programmers have given it liberty to do. And so they're trained, these generative AIs are trained on basically the same types of data. And they basically work in a lot of the same ways in terms of when you answer the question, the way it processes your question, and the way it tries to understand it and retrieve, and not retrieve, but actually create an answer or a response for you, a novel response. So that seems way more unlimited than what we had in the 50s, but it's still limited. It's, for example, you can't tell ChatGPT, can you lower, can you set my thermostat to 65 degrees over the weekend? I forgot to change it. And we're on vacation. It can't do things like that. It can't reach out of its confines and do other things. So it is limited in that way. And narrow AI is very ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Most AI applications now, except for some in research institutions, fall into that category. So what's general? So basically, here's some examples of what narrow is. Your spam email filter, in Gmail or in Outlook, sometimes we always have to do this, right? We have to look in our spam filter to see if an email got tossed in there by the filter. Someone, that happens frequently, that an email that isn't spam gets caught, but this is AI doing that. It's looking at the email, trying to understand if it looks like spam or not. So that's a common example. Chatbots are another. That includes ChatGPT, BingChat, it includes Siri, it includes Alexa. Those are all considered chatbots. mix that in with voice activated assistants. I consider those bots kind of, some are text, some are voice, but they're all bots. And then you've got, bots that can play chess. And then we've got original content creation, which is generative AI, which is called generative AI. And that includes ChatGPT, BingChat, Dolly, which is an image generating tool. So what's general intelligence, the artificial intelligence then? Well, this is purely theoretical right now. This is where the AI actually can learn on its own. It doesn't need humans to train it. And it can handle a wide range of tasks, not just very siloed types of applications like we saw on the previous slide. So this is really an AI that can do anything. It could solve any problem. It could think on its own, and it could do any intellectual task a human can do. Meaning, so intellectual, we know what that is. It's just things where you're problem solving, you're creating something. It doesn't have compassion, doesn't have empathy, doesn't know what love is. I mean, all of those things that are intrinsic to what the human experience is, those things, it obviously can't do those things. But anything intellectual, where if there's a process, a thinking process tied to it, then that's what general artificial intelligence is trying to be able to do. And right now, it's just theoretical. Nothing, as far as we know, has been released that can do that type of thing. There's obviously a lot of science fiction movies that really riff on that theme of general artificial intelligence. Terminator comes to mind, where they just, we've all seen the Terminator. 2001: A Space Odyssey is another, but this is just theoretical right now in research institutions and universities, just working this out. So that's really brings us up to right now with ChatGPT. How many of you have used it? You can just put your answers in chat, or you can if you're on camera, you can just put your hand up. But yeah, it's fun to use. No, well, I got a thumbs down. Okay. So ChatGPT, so yeah, I'm seeing, so some of you haven't used it yet, some of you really love it, and some of you sounds like will never get within 6 feet of ChatGPT. Totally fine. So ChatGPT was created by OpenAI, which is the company. In fact, Microsoft has invested billions of dollars into OpenAI, the company. Fun fact that Microsoft is a huge investor with OpenAI, and also know that BingChat uses a lot of the OpenAI technology in BingChat. It uses the GPT 3.5 language model, and so ChatGPT has basically 2 models right now you can select from. When you go onto their website, you can use 3.5 or you can use 4. 4 is the latest version. But BingChat is really, under the hood, is basically ChatGPT. Same technology. And so how did ChatGPT just bust on the scene like the Beatles, back when the Beatles were, just exploded on the scene and just kind of wiped all the other bands under the rug, swept them under the rug? It's the way it works. It works a little bit different than other AIs. It's able to analyze vast amounts of text from the internet, learning patterns, relationships within the language. It's able to understand your question in a predictive way. So when you start typing in a question, it doesn't start doing anything until you hit enter. Then it looks at that sentence from all different angles. It looks at it, okay, how did you start the sentence? How did you end the sentence? And then it tries to predict what might be in the middle of your sentence. That sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? It just uses these predictions to try to just narrow down what you're asking. And so it looks at your question not in a linear way, which is how AIs normally have done it in the past, one character at a time sequentially. It looks at it from almost 2 dimensions and simultaneously starts trying to dissect your question in a lot of different ways, looking at it from 2 directions, 3 directions. And then it looks at it basically takes all of what it's doing in its predictions and maps those predictions against all the data it has in its database, and then tries to get a response for you that way. So it's very interesting how it works, and it's very quick. I have someone, Brian said, I had an AI develop a 3-minute speech to Kiwanis on leadership development. Not bad. The jokes weren't funny. Yeah. So right, it's just like it's chat. These AIs are not human, so they don't understand humor, irony, anything like that. But they can get you some of the way there, though. They could get you some of the way, maybe most of the way there, which is what we'll talk about. And then the human always needs to be in the loop, as we say. So anyway, that's how it works. There's basically with these generative AI models, there's BingChat and there's ChatGPT. If we're talking about text chatting, right? There's generative AI for images. DALL-E comes to mind. That's an OpenAI product. There's several others. We're going to talk about just text chat bots right now and the features. So you have on the left, you got BingChat, which is free, doesn't cost anything to use. Your data is protected. It has no access to your organizational data. So it's your job, for example, if you wanted to go ahead and summarize a bunch of emails that you received that day, it can't do that. It doesn't have access to any of your organizational data at work, as an example. And it will retain your chat history, and you can put it. It will use third-party plugins as well. So, in other words, one of the examples of that is you go into BingChat and you can ask it a question. You can have it generate an image for you. It can do that, and it does that through plugins. And then we have BingChat Enterprise, which is fairly new. Just got to keep an eye on my chat here. BingChat Enterprise is new, fairly new. It's paid. It's generally for organizations that have Microsoft accounts. Kiwanis in the office, we have Microsoft accounts. We have BingChat Enterprise as part of our suite of tools that we have there. It's enhanced protection. Data is not saved, which is nice. So anything I do on BingChat Enterprise, that data that I'm sending a question to BingChat and it's giving me a response. None of that is saved on the Microsoft servers at all. It's all just a two-way conversation, but nothing is saved during that interaction. And I can't go back and look at what my chat was, because that would be saving that history. It doesn't save any history as part of that. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't support third-party plugins, because you really can't. With a third-party plugin, there's no guarantee that third-party plugin is not going to take your data and store it someplace. So BingChat Enterprise does not allow for plugins. So you're limited a little bit in what you can do with it compared to BingChat, but you get some enhanced protection for your data, which is nice. So that's BingChat and BingChat Enterprise. BingChat Enterprise is paid. It's through, you get that through like an E3 or an E5 license with Microsoft. And then ChatGPT. So there's a free version. Some of you may have used the free version or the paid, I'm not sure, but the free version will work just without paying anything. They will throttle you, though. In other words, they will, if you start asking too many questions, they'll slow you way down, or they won't respond. It'll take a nap, or it'll just say, talk to the hand. You've asked enough questions for one day. And then it'll go serve other customers. So there is a limit to how much it will interact with you. Your data is protected with ChatGPT. Has no access to your organizational data, and there is chat history with the free version. some, and you can use third-party plugins there, which is nice. So you can generate images and do some very low-level data analysis with some of those plugins. And then ChatGPT Plus, which is the new version. Well, not new, it's the paid version. It's been around for several months now. It's paid. It's $20 a month. And you have full chat history, third-party plugins, all of that. And it also wants to know about you. So there's a profile section with ChatGPT Plus where you tell it about yourself. You tell it what you want. What does it want? What can you tell? Whatever you want would tell it would be something that would help it understand you when it comes up with a response. So for example, I told it, I work at Kiwanis International. Kiwanis is a service organization, and we our mission, and I pasted in our mission, and I gave ChatGPT some information about me, so it knew about me. So then when it started interacting with me, it kept that in mind, and so when the questions were contextual to Kiwanis, it started giving me more contextual responses. And I'll show you a few examples of that probably in the second session, where we're going to do a lot of hands-on then. But it's pretty cool stuff. So that's it. Those are the 4 that are out there. I would encourage you to try them if you haven't, even if you're opposed to them for whatever reason, at least try it and just give it a try, just to understand what the technology is and see how it works. I think it's interesting to do that, and there's value in doing that, even if you're not going to use it every day. So we're going to get into some examples, some real life examples here. So with generative AI, when you ask it, what I've been using the term question, the official term is really prompt. So a prompt is more than a question, in the sense that it's more detailed than a question. Like a question could be, help me figure out why my computer is running slow. That would be a question that you can ask ChatGPT, you can ask a generative AI. The AI is not going to really, it's going to ask you, it's not going to really know what you're talking about specifically, like your specific problem. So it's going to give you a very generic, vague answer. A prompt is more specific. So think about it this way. Let's say you have someone at work who's really smart, super smart, and they've been transferred to a new department. They just wanted to change. Let's say they were in, I don't know, HR for 20 years. They're brilliant, extremely smart, but they wanted to try something new, and they get hired in on a same company but a different department. So now you have someone who's super smart, but they don't know the domain that they're in 100%. They're not as familiar with it. So that person is their boss. You couldn't just give them questions. You would have to give them more of what a prompt would be, which is more specifics about what you wanted them to do. Because they're smart and they could figure it out. If they had enough details, they could just do it on their own, but you have to provide them with enough detail, if that makes sense. That's how I look at generative AI. It's it's not a person, it's a smart thing, but you need to help it along. You need to ask it, direct it, and guide it the right way, so you can get what you want quickly. Otherwise, you're going to be communicating with it for a long time. So one of the what I consider an art form with AI in general, generative AI, is how to write really good and effective prompts with AI. So here's an example from ChatGPT. This is a prompt that I gave it. Create a fundraising idea for children for my Kiwanis Club that includes an event that includes wine tasting and shelter dogs. So now look at the response. There's some things I highlighted in red. how did it know my name, and how did it know what club I was in? I didn't ask it that. I didn't tell it, right? I didn't tell it what club I was in. I didn't tell it my name, but it knows that. Okay, this isn't magic. It's not doing anything spooky. When I trained it, when I went into my profile, I told it. Remember earlier, I said I'm a member of Kiwanis. I told it what club I'm a member of in St. Joseph, Benton Harbor, Michigan. I gave it some information about me. So it knows a little bit about me. So when I asked about for my Kiwanis club, it said, oh, okay, well, Tom's the member of the Kiwanis club. He told me that he's the member of the club in St. Joseph, Benton Harbor. I know his name because I'm logged in. It knows my name. That's an easy one. And so it's able to help me out even more because now it knows where my club is. And it has data about Michigan. It knows about the counties. It knows about the demographics. It knows a lot about where my club is. Okay. So if let's say you didn't want to put that information in, let's say you're using BingChat, and BingChat doesn't have that feature, you would have to say that in your prompt. You would have to say, create a fundraising idea for children in my Kiwanis club, which is located in St. Joseph, Michigan, et cetera. You'd want to give it that information, right, in the prompt, so it had it, and then go from there. And so this was it. And so it said, here's what it gave me. Okay, this is not the whole thing because the whole thing was several pages long. But that's the prompt above. So this is the ChatGPT interface you're looking at right here. So it gave me an event name, Pause and Pour, a night of wine and whiskers. And it gave me an overview. It gave me some information about the venue, the date and time, basically something for me to start with and something where I could start ideating with my club. I could bring this to my club. I could tweak it a little bit, bring it to the club and pitch this idea. So it got me about 80% of the way there. And then I'm just basically like an editor going through and saying, no, I don't like that, or I like this, or maybe I didn't like the answer it gave me. Then I could go where it says send a message down there at the bottom of the screen. And I could say, this is good, but, and then I could give it more prompts and it would give me a more specific answer, maybe better tailored to what I was looking for. So basically event highlights, you don't see all of it, but it gave me about 8 or 9 different things I could do at this wine tasting with dogs event. And it was pretty impressive. And so then I asked it, okay, create me a logo for that event. And because ChatGPT uses plugins, you can see that mixer box, image generator, that little white box there. It generated an image for my event. And here's the image it generated. So if I didn't like this image, I could have went back and I could have said, make the wine glass smaller, make sure the dog is looking at the glass, whatever I wanted to tell it, it would go ahead and it would regenerate those images. And so Bernard I'm going to make sure I keep up with these questions. So Bernard was asking if he subscribes to ChatGPT, how can he use it? So ChatGPT is only browser based. So you have to just use it you could use it on your computer. You can also use it on your phone because the browser it's mobile responsive. So it will resize for your mobile phone as well. So BingChat though, you can use the Edge app and BingChat is built into it. Brian was asking, are images registered and protected? So this is an area where the law has not caught up to yet. So there are no laws to govern this stuff. So this is a novel image. Okay, this is according to generative AI. The image you're looking at right here, there's no other image out there like this one. This is unique, like an artist painted it. So because of that, it's should not be under any sort of copyright infringements or anything like that. But because the law hasn't caught up, and because we really don't understand how it does a lot of this stuff, how it generates images, could it someday start pulling in, pieces of a Van Gogh painting and pieces of a Picasso and kind of, merging them together? Maybe, but that would be considered novel though, and not a copyright infringement, believe it or not. You see this on YouTube all the time. Someone will be using like a copywritten song, but they're doing some sort of dance to it, or they're doing something else in that video. It's not just the music, it's something else. And now that's considered an original work. And it's very hard to copyright that or go after someone for a copyright infringement. So my point here is this is very, it's an unknown area. So I would say for now, any images that get generated from an AI like this, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just use them because there's no laws to prevent it. And it's supposed to be, and I believe that it is myself, that this is unique. It's a novel creation. And could you go and copyright it? Right now there's no laws that would prevent you from copyrighting an image that a generative AI created. So there's no guardrails for this right now. So hopefully that answered your question, Brian. And so then I said, okay, now I got my image. I have a pretty good pitch for this. So my whole objective here was to go to my club and try to get this service project greenlit. Okay. So the next thing on the list was, okay, I need to create an email. I need to create an email so I could send to my club members, and I need to also send it to all the potential sponsors in my area to get them on board. So basically, you could see the prompt up there. It's a very detailed prompt, okay? Because again, the more detail you provide, the better response you're going to get. So basically, I asked ChatGPT to create an email message to my club members that explains the fundraiser idea in order. Now, it knows what the fundraiser idea is because it created it to get their participation. So I don't have to go through any of the details of the fundraiser. It already knows about that. I told it I want an HTML email. So that's the nice, whenever you get an email and it's got images and everything is formatted and almost looks like a web page, right? That's an HTML-based email. And that's what I wanted. And it's important that you and I wanted ChatGPT to build me this HTML email, okay? Is what I wanted. So I told it a few things it needed to know, that if you've ever worked with HTML emails before or created them, the styles, the colors and the fonts, all of that kind of stuff needs to be embedded a certain way into the actual HTML. It can't be a separate file that gets imported, because that's not how HTML email works. So I had to tell it, that's called inline styling. And I had to make sure that I told it that it would give me inline CSS, which is cascading style sheets, which is what makes a web page look pretty and makes everything look good. And it gave the GPT those are the Kiwanis brand colors. That's 00. See those pound 003874, etc. Those are all hexadecimal colors. They represent an RGB value. The first two values represent red. The next two represent green, and the last two hexadecimal digits represent blue. So RGB, for those of you who use Photoshop, know what RGB is. It's just a way of creating colors with codes, right? And so basically, I told it all of that, and I also told it to give me an event image in a certain style of a certain artist, with a certain style of an advertising poster, with the style of constructivism, with the wine glass and all of that good stuff, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and so went ahead and it created the HTML email for me. So now I could take this and I could paste it into any email editor, put it in HTML mode, right? You just can't paste this in, put it in HTML mode, you enter it, or you use your email marketing program to do it, and now you end up with this. Okay, so this was the HTML email that ChatGPT created for me. It had details about, like I gave it details about where the event was, where it was going to be held, what day it was going to be on, and just went ahead and just inserted all of that stuff for me. And again, it wasn't perfect. I had to go in and make some changes, but this got me 90% of the way there. So that's really, I think, what I've really like about it is it's not going to solve everything, but it'll save you a lot of time. It's a huge productivity booster. So we'll talk about BingChat next week. And what I'd like to do is just do some live deep dives with this and actually create some content with, we could do BingChat, we could do ChatGPT. So if you're around, if you could attend next week, that would be great. And basically what we'll do is we'll just, we could just throw some ideas in chat and we'll just play around, and I'll show you how to construct prompts. So you just say, this is what I'm kind of trying to do, and we could write a prompt in real time and enter it into ChatGPT and also BingChat and see what the differences are, because they both will give you different results, which is interesting since they're the same language model, but they'll give you really different results. Both good, but just different. It's interesting to see that. So we'll do that next week. So we'll go over BingChat. We'll do a quick introduction to BingChat. Then we'll just get our hands dirty with some real life work that we got to do with it. So that's what I'm planning for next week. So think about, love for you to continue with me next week. Just think about some of the things that could really help you with AI, or like some things you've been thinking about, maybe not sure how to do it, or but let's work that out next week. So it'll be a lot of hands-on next week. So we got through all the history. We'll do some hands-on. We'll talk about the ethical considerations a little bit. I kind of peppered that in a little bit tonight. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But then I just want to do mostly hands-on next week. So.
This is wonderful. Now, my plan was to be in bed by 11 like normal. I don't think that's going to happen tonight.
Sue, go to bed. You need it. You need your rest.
I would be like going, oh, I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this. We had a presentation at our Kiwanis Club about the GPT stuff from an academic perspective. A professor from Central Michigan University spoke to our club, and the question was, with AI, people doing reports and sending stuff in, and how are they, how are professors dealing with it from a point of, is it their work or not their work? And one of the questions basically came back and said, you know what, students can do what they want. They can hire people to write papers however they want to do it. They're the ones that have to know the information in the end. And, because a lot of the schools, put it through a plagiarism format anyway, but he's like,
sure,
it's not something we're going to be able to stop. It's hard to go there. So, I think this will be great. Is when you put that up there about the, the wine and the pause, that was pretty amazing of what it generated. So, any questions for Tom tonight? Tom, if you want to go ahead and take your screen down, we can open it up and get everybody's picture on and see if anybody wants to read anything.
Sure.
There we go. Thoughts, questions? I know there's a lot of people on here, so just go ahead and unmute and ask your question. We got about 6 minutes left, so.
Hey, Sue, this is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
I think that the fact is, for me, I don't even know what questions to ask at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really encouraged to see more of this, and we'll likely do a little study in between now and next week. So maybe I do know a question or two to ask and sound like I have some idea of what I'm talking about.
Great.
Great.
Great. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yep. Again, you can't mess it up, right?
No,
You
no,
know,
no, it's quite fun once you get into it and start playing around with it and getting those prompts, being able to do a good prompt. It's easy. You just have to just think like, again, you're working with someone who's smart but really doesn't know, needs direction.
I wanted to let Tom know that when he asked the question, did we have any experience at all? Yes or no? I couldn't answer yes, and the only way I knew how to say no was thumbs down. So my thumbs down was not an attitude, but just a negative answer temporarily.
Okay, fair
Got
enough.
it.
Okay, good, excellent.
So there's
Nice
a
to
question
see
in there about
everybody.
explaining the terminology, like what's a chatbot?
So a chatbot is just, it's a computer that you can ask questions. You see them on websites sometimes. If you need support, you go in and there's a little box, usually on the lower right corner. You click on it, and then it'll pop up and say, "What can I help you with today?"
Mhm.
And you tell it, give it your answer, your question, and then it'll try to answer it for you right then and there. If it can't, it'll put your question. It'll send your question to a queue, like a support queue, and then a human will answer it via email if the chatbot can't answer it. Depending on what site you're on, if you're logged in, how much it knows about you. It's just a text chat feature.
And I think, as someone who uses that a lot, you didn't know that's what it was called. It was a chat, right? It was just, if I needed to talk to Delta, I would just chat with Delta. But they ask all the questions first before you can get to a representative to get you in the right spot.
Right, and they try to answer it with an automated with their chat. They're trying to get their AI answer it.
Right.
For common questions, it can answer it.
Right.
So it looks like Dan has a question. There's a few here. Can the current form of ChatGPT translate all Kiwanis materials into all Kiwanis languages for virtually no cost? Yes, it can. So you can, now when you say materials, it would have to be text. Like you couldn't upload a PDF. You'd have to take the text and paste it into ChatGPT and then tell it what language you wanted to translate it in. And yes, it can absolutely do that. That's one of its strongest skills, is doing language translations. What else?
So it could translate from English to French, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So is that a
Yeah.
more dependable translation than when I use Google Translate, for instance?
They're comparable. They're very comparable. So Google has their own AI called Bard, BARD, and that's what I believe they're using for their translation tool as well. So they're using AI. So it's very similar, I would say. I haven't put them head to head to see what translations were better, but they're both really good. What's nice about ChatGPT is it has all of that, those languages and that text already built into it, so it's able to understand context. So sometimes with Google Translate, sometimes some of the words are out of, or the phrases aren't constructed correctly, or it's not perfect. ChatGPT is not perfect either. I think they're on par. ChatGPT may be a little bit better, from what I've heard.
Definitely something for Kiwanis eventually to look at down the road.
We're already, we're working on one called Kyra, which is Kiwanis Interactive Response Agent, which is uses generative AI, where it'll be plugged into Engage after we go live with Engage. It's not going to be rolled out with Engage, but it'll be where you're logged into KI Engage, and you could say, it'll know who you are because you're logged in, and it'll, you can ask it, what's my member number, or when did my club charter, and it'll ask, well, what club? If you're in more than one club, it knows all about you. so it can register you for convention. It can do all kinds of cool things. We're bouncing around the ideas with it now, but we will be using. It'll definitely be. We'll have AI tools built in to engage for sure.
Excitement abounds. Excitement's out there. Okay, so it is now 8:59. We're gonna call it an evening because I think we could all be on here once we got going and start playing around. But I encourage you to go ahead and look at ChatGPT and check it out and think about your questions. If there's anyone else you'd like to have join us next week, if they would just go to the website or the tinyurl.com /Kiwanis LT, they could go ahead and register. We're trying to keep the registration separate so that we know who's with us, so we can communicate with them directly if, like when we get the videos and stuff like that together. So we will take this video and clean it up a little bit, take up all the chatter at the beginning that we don't need and put a header on it, and then load that up into Kiwanis Michigan's YouTube page, and then we'll let you know when that is available. And we will plan on seeing you all again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for the second part and the fun part of AI, an introduction to ChatGPT, BingChat, and everything else beyond that. So everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Tom.
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, great information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
It was a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you all next week.